On January 13, 2015, checkpoint number 5, located on the Donetsk-Mariupol highway near the town of Volnovaha, was shelled. A Grad multiple rocket launch system shelled the position at which passport control of citizens crossing the demarcation line was carried out. Most of the missiles fell into the field, but one of them exploded in the vicinity of a bus serving the Zlatoustivka-Donetsk route. As a result, 12 people were killed and 18 passengers injured. On the same day, another assault with the use of artillery and tanks resulted in the collapse of the control tower at Donetsk airport.
Есть попадание, чуть выше центра.
The tower was an excellent observation point, where artillery spotters stood on duty around the clock. The well-coordinated fire of Ukrainian artillery was the main factor that prevented Russian terrorist forces from seizing the entire facility. The collapse of the control tower can be considered the beginning of the end of the heroic defense of Donetsk airport, which lasted a total of 242 days. In the summer of 2014, the Russian Federation committed an act of armed aggression against Ukraine. We're studying the course of this war, tracing the links between military operations, diplomacy, politics, and economics. We're trying to understand how it was, and most importantly, why. The so-called Christmas lull was over. On the morning of January 13th, the Russian terrorist forces launched a massive assault on the facilities at Donetsk airport. Understanding the importance of the control tower as an observation point, the enemy sought to destroy it, and as a result of prolonged shelling from tank guns, the 7 upper floors of building collapsed. The militants then carried out another huge assault on the airport's new terminal. They counted on the absence of artillery countermeasures and accordingly were certain victory would be easy. However, the Ukrainian spotters who miraculously survived when the tower collapsed continued their work, relying on the debris that remained. Due to the presence of artillery cover, the assault was repelled. The militants lost up to 250 people and announced an ultimatum to the defenders of the terminal to leave their positions by 5 p.m. But the ultimatum was rejected. Fighting with the enemy and a record frost continued. The main hotspot in the ATO zone was Donetsk airport, but battles and shelling raged along the entire demarcation line. As a result of shelling on January 14th, a soldier in Stanitsa Luhanska and a local resident in Shastia were killed. At the same time, despite the fact that the remainder of the control tower, the meteorological tower, the new terminal and the positions north of the runway at Donetsk airport were held by Ukrainian troops, the militants once again announced that they had fully captured it. This was the usual manipulation of the truth by the substitution of concepts. Fire control, that is, the ability to fire at Ukrainian troops, was projected as physical control of the territory. It's worth mentioning that by reinforcing the grouping of troops in the Donetsk direction, the Kremlin didn't forget about other key places. On January 15th, the arrival of up to 15 armored vehicles and 1 battalion of soldiers in the area of Shastia, Stanitsa Luhanska, was recorded. We're talking about military personnel who were transferred from Russia. The battle for the airport in Donetsk continued. The basement and the second floor of the half-destroyed terminal were occupied by militants, while at the same time Ukrainian troops were on the first floor. In the afternoon, the leader of the terrorists, Zakharchenko, announced that the terminal would be taken within 30 minutes. However, these statements did not come true. The battle for Donetsk airport demonstrated the essence of this hybrid war. While the ceasefire center was still adopting a decision, militants attacked the terminal. Besides, Russia, in the manner that is inherent to it, took 2 sides of the confrontation at once. The task was simple: to achieve set objectives through force, while at the same time creating the illusion of a peace-loving country and detachment from the conflict. On the one side, there were Russian officers who were supposed to call the independent local leaders Zakharchenko to peace. On the other side, there was Russian equipment, and Russian soldiers acted in the interests of this defiantly intractable leader of the militants. On the evening of January 15th, a massive assault on the building of the new terminal was carried out. Moreover, its preparation and coordination was carried out by Russian officers, which radically influenced the course of the battle. As preparation for the assault, the UR-77 meteorite mine clearing device was used to organize passage through the Ukrainian minefields that surrounded the building. The principle of its operation is to remotely install a special charge on the minefield. The shockwave from the explosion destroys mines in a rectangular-shaped area that is 90 meters long and 6 meters wide. But the charge got caught on fragments of the roof and did not lie properly on the ground. The blast brought down the remains of the structure, but mine clearing didn't properly take place. Part of the advanced group of Russian special forces, whose task was reconnaissance, artillery adjustments, and sniper cover, got blown up by mines and was unable to complete the task in its entirety. The second attacking echelon got close to the positions of the Ukrainian military, and the swiftness of the attack prevented the Ukrainian artillery from erecting a fire shield. But having retreated deep into the ruins of the terminal, its defenders imposed a battle on Russian paratroopers in dark and unfamiliar surroundings. A fierce battle among the ruined concrete and glowing plastic from wall cladding took place at extremely close quarters, right up to hand-to-hand fighting on occasions. Without observing the previously characteristic opposition of Ukrainian artillery, Russian troops, supported by tanks, sought to surround the terminal building. But spotters who remained on the ruins of the control tower were able to organize an artillery strike, which led to significant losses in the ranks of the attackers. During the fighting, the Ukrainian side managed to get reinforcements to the terminal area, which made it possible to clear the enemy from the second floor of the building. Ukrainian electronic warfare troops were able to briefly drown out Russian communications, which resulted in loss of control of the battle and the complete disruption of the attack. Hastily engaged reserves of the Russian terrorist forces also came under attack from Ukrainian artillery. The third echelon of the attack was scattered by this artillery fire and put to flight. As a result of mine explosions, artillery fire, and close combat, total losses incurred by Russian terrorist forces were 132 people killed and 149 wounded. Of this number, 38 killed and 61 wounded were identified as servicemen of the 234th Airborne Assault Regiment of the 76th Airborne Assault Division from Pskov. During the day, a total of 4 tanks of the 5th Tank Brigade of the Russian Federation were destroyed. The losses suffered by the Ukrainian side came to 2 killed and 11 wounded. It should be understood that such a large difference in the number of losses is due primarily to mistakes by the Russian command, which were multiplied by the effective work of Ukrainian artillery. The OSCE mission, as usual, called all sides to peace, but despite the previously planned strategies, its observers didn't reach the terminals. By the end of the day, the terrorists fired at the building of the meteorological tower from a Grad multiple rocket launch system. On January 16th, a battle took place around Mykolaiivka, Telmanova district. 4 Ukrainian soldiers were injured by fire from the enemy's anti-tank guns and mortars. On the same day, an act of sabotage took place in the area of the Stanitsa Luhanska. A local resident came to the Ukrainian checkpoint. He handed the soldiers a 3-liter jar of honey, thanked them for their service and left. When the can was opened, it exploded. A homemade explosive device killed 1 soldier and seriously injured 3 others. In the area of Donetsk airport, the fight resumed at 8 a.m. Militants used a lot of smoke grenades, which subsequently led to myths about the widespread use of gas grenades by terrorists. It should be understood that army smoke bombs emit very accurate and dense smoke. Together with emissions from the burning plastic of the wall cladding and insulation, The effect of this was no worse than from poison gas. The attack by militants lasted more than 5 hours in total, and it was only possible to repel it by lunch. OSCE observers arrived at the airport in the afternoon, which led to a halt in shooting and shelling. A part of the militants and Russian troops moved to the area around the village of Spartak, which is north of the airport, to restore combat capability. The situation around the ruins of the new terminal at Donetsk airport seriously escalated. On the night of January 17th, Grad attacked Pisky and Tonenka, and reinforcements numbering 15 troops of the 90th Separate Air Mobile Battalion got through to the terminals and immediately entered the battle. The militants managed to retake the second floor of the terminal, with the battle literally taking place in all 3 dimensions. It should be understood that because of the quite small size of the new terminal building and large number of troops there, it would have been impossible to gain a foothold there. Coming under constant shelling and sometimes prompting fire at themselves, crack Ukrainian cyber troops continued the battle. A sharp jump in temperature led to the appearance of a thick fog around the area of the airport, and this complicated the adjustment of artillery and so reduced the efficiency of its work. On January 17th, the Russian side requested a truce to take away the bodies of those soldiers who'd died in fighting 2 days earlier. Around lunchtime, the tactical group of the 93rd Brigade went to storm the enemy's positions in the area of the Iversky Monastery. It's 500 meters south of the ruins of the control tower. The offensive was part of a large operation. It involved several tasks, taking control of the monastery and then moving east to the Polit Hotel. This would allow the terminal to be held securely. It was also planned to seize the village of Spartak and take control of the Putilov Bridge. But these tasks could not be completed. Fatigue and problems in the interaction and technical equipping of troops were to blame. During the operation, it was possible to unblock the ruins of the control tower, expand the zone of control, evacuate 23 wounded soldiers, and take away 3 dead soldiers. Despite the fact that the monastery couldn't be taken, these actions diverted the attention of the enemy from the new terminal building. Forced to maneuver foreign forces, they abandoned attempts at assault for a brief time, giving the cyborgs a little respite. Taking advantage of the lull, the Russians took away the bodies of their dead soldiers on January 15th. In addition to previously announced losses, the 104th Airborne Assault Regiment of the 76th Division from Pskov lost 26 people and 37 were wounded. The combined battalion of the Chechen Interior Ministry lost 21 and 29 respectively. The number of local militants who died in senseless attacks in the ruins of what used to be the modern Donetsk airport runs into hundreds, but they have never been announced or accurately recorded. The Kremlin treats its own people poorly, forgets about them very quickly and erases the memory of their merits. For Kremlin strategists, people are merely a resource that can always be replenished, replaced by more of the same faceless cannon fodder. And the homeland will forget this, always.
Российских войск на Украине нет.